Greetings everyone, my name is Dr. Sherry Havard, the Deployment Support Command Suicide Prevention Program Manager. On behalf of the DSC, Commanding General, Brigadier General Manu Davis, and Command Sergeant Major Rodney Davenport, thank you for your unwavering support as we continue to combat suicide across the command. Today, you will receive an introduction to the ACE Base Plus One module as a foundation for ACE SI. The standard ACE training has been updated to ACE Base Plus One and will be an annual mandatory requirement training to complete by April of every fiscal year. To ensure the DSC remains in full compliance, all commands must show 100% accountability of personnel within their footprints by inputting their numbers into DTMS and sending over a copy of your training sign and roster to the DSC Suicide Prevention Program Manager. As many may know, in 2018, the ACE training was updated to highlight its use not only during a crisis, but also before one occurs by incorporating Army team building and unit cohesion concepts. This training is aligned with the Center for Disease Control and Prevention's Strategic Comprehensive Public Health approach to suicide prevention. In 2022, the ACE Suicide Prevention and Intervention material was updated yet again and coined ACE Base Plus One. The training now consists of a base module along with a menu of plus one modules that the unit's command team can choose from based upon the unit's needs. Together, the base module and the plus one module make up the mandatory 1 hour of annual suicide prevention and intervention training. In addition to the tailored training approach, the training is now designed to be more interactive and conversational, in contrast to a traditional annual briefing. ACE Base Plus One is an annual conversation at platoon level where soldiers in the platoon are able to discuss how they can take care of one another on a humane level as it pertains to suicide prevention and intervention. In 2023, the Army Suicide Prevention and Intervention Training expanded to include a tailored curriculum for the soldiers, circle of support members, and DA civilians. A soldier's circle of support includes anyone from the soldiers considers to be priority within their support system, such as a spouse, significant other, parent, sibling, other family member, mentor, and friend. The intent is that offering circle of support members the same knowledge and skills while using the same language and strategies can enable conversation between the circle of support members and the soldier regarding suicide prevention and intervention. What's more, it can promote effective communication, bolster protective factors like increased cohesion and connection, and increase suicide prevention efforts within the whole Army family. The complete ACE Base Plus One training package consists of a 5 PowerPoint presentation, ACE Base, Fighting the Stigma, Active Listening, Practicing ACE, and Lethal Means, and a smart guide with key information to be discussed for each slide. Each module should be trained to standard and not to time. It is most effective when time is allowed for in-depth group discussion and participation. To maximize the benefits of this training, allow for extra time for dialogue and interaction. Once again, welcome to the Ask, Care, Escort training, also known as ACE, training which has been updated to reflect the new ACE Base Plus One module. Suicide can be an uncomfortable topic to discuss, and it can be difficult to find the words to talk about it. As researchers continue to learn more about suicide and those impacted by it, the language used continues to evolve. For example, the term committed suicide perpetuates the idea that suicide is a criminal act, which can be stigmatizing. Instead, consider using the phrases died by suicide or attempted suicide. Participants may unintentionally use stigmatizing language as not everyone understands the harmful impacts of those words. It is recommended that during the training, participants are allowed to use the words they feel comfortable with to promote open conversation. However, it is recommended that the instructor supports participant usage of destigmatized language and uses those words themselves. Remember, Risk factors do not always indicate an emergency, but may suggest that a problem is developing, and warning signs indicate that there is a need to take immediate action. As mentioned earlier, the Army recently adopted a new customizable module-based ACE training package to extend the suicide prevention concepts outlined in Department of Defense Instruction 649016. The ACE Base Plus One unit training is intended for uniformed personnel to meet annual suicide prevention training requirements. The Base Plus One format begins with the base module that addresses suicide prevention and intervention concepts. This choice of another module addressing stigma, active listening, practicing ACE, and lethal means is available. Each module can be linked to the base module or stand on its own, supporting the commander's ability to utilize the training throughout the annual training cycle. Now that we've understand how this training fits into the larger picture of Army suicide prevention, we can discuss the major learning objectives for ACE-SI Tier 2 specifically. Suicide is a problem of great concern. In the Army, and exposure is associated with psychological impact. Suicide is a problem plaguing all parts of society, including the military. Unfortunately, a devastating issue that many of us are familiar with. Some of us here today may have been affected in some way by the loss of someone to suicide. One suicide is too many. What's more, each suicide impacts more than just the person who died. Professionals who study suicide have stated that approximately 135 people are impacted by each suicide death. A loss of life due to suicide creates a ripple effect. Researchers found that exposure to suicide was associated with higher depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. This effect was exacerbated by the closeness to the person lost to suicide. Simply put, suicide can put the psychological well-being of family soldiers and Army soldiers at risk. Secretary of Defense and retired U.S. Army 4-star General Lloyd Austin III said, "Every death by suicide is a tragedy that impacts our people, our military units, and our readiness. That's why we remain committed to a comprehensive and integrated approach to suicide prevention." Each soldier has a role to play in lessening the impact of suicide within the Army family. The Army has an organization in doubling down on efforts to prevent suicide and its tragic effects, but it cannot be done within each and every one of you in this room. You are part of the comprehensive and integrated approach to preventing suicide and protecting others from its devastating impacts. The Army and its people need you to concentrate your efforts in the prevention strategies within your control and influence, which will be covered in today's training. It's worth noting that this is not your typical mandatory training that you just sit through and passively receive information. Instead, this training is designed to be interactive. There will be opportunities for large and small group discussions. Your contributions are valuable. Furthermore, I encourage you to ask questions if and when they arise. This training is designed in such a way to promote communication, cohesion, and trust within your unit, which are all factors that protect against the risk of suicide. Simply put, paying attention and engaging in the discussions and activities can help save a life and save many more from the heartache of losing someone to suicide. First, you will get in a small group of 3 to 4 people and discuss the questions posted on the slide. Which Army values do you believe are most important to your role in preventing suicide? How could a soldier leverage that value to help reduce suicide in the unit? If you finish your discussion on one value, then go ahead and discuss another value. Afterwards, we will come back together and I will ask you to share your thoughts with the large group. Who would like to share the value their group chose and how that value is linked to suicide prevention? If you still need a little more time, I would like to start first. For instance, the duty is to fulfill your obligations and work as a team. This includes reaching out to your fellow soldiers, and it also means reaching out when you yourself need help too. The Army is made up of members with shared values and strong commitment to the mission and to one another. Values drive behavior. Tapping into your values can help you act during difficult situations. Sometimes acting on your values means making higher level leaders aware of circumstances they may not know of. Sometimes acting on your values means getting out of your comfort zone and directly addressing the concerning situation. This takes us to the purpose of today's training. The purpose of the ACE base module is twofold. First, this training will increase awareness of protective factors, risk factors, and warning signs that contribute to a person's level of risk for suicide. Second, the training will equip you with specific actions that can be taken to bolster protective factors, mitigate risk, and intervene in a crisis in order to help prevent suicide by utilizing the steps Ask, Care, Escort, ACE. Your role in suicide prevention is to recognize risk and mitigate it when possible by taking appropriate action. To do this, you must know what to look out for. We will kick off the training with an overview of protective factors, risk factors, and warning signs. Consider a traffic light. A traffic light helps to manage and control the risk of preventable traffic accidents that can result in injury or death. The traffic light can serve a similar purpose and simplified framework for suicide prevention. The colors represent the levels of risk and specifically the type of behaviors being demonstrated, while also providing guidance as to what steps to take to mitigate risk. Green lights mean drive on when relatively safe. Protective factors are behaviors or support systems that help to decrease the chances that a combination of risk factors and life challenges result in negative outcomes. Yellow lights means caution. Risk factors are issues that increase suicide risk. While risk factors alone do not necessarily indicate an emergency or crisis, a combination of risk factors would increase concern. Red lights mean stop. Warning signs are time-sensitive concerns and indicate the highest level of risk. When you recognize warning signs, you must stop what you are doing and take immediate action. No single factor differentiates a red light from a yellow light. Factors can differ amongst individuals and situations. The yellow light is meant to be a cue to action, whereas the red light is a sign of immediate danger. Stop what you are doing and give undivided attention to the situation at hand. Protective factors, risk factors, and warning signs all play a role in identifying an individual's level of risk for suicide. Being aware and alert to the signs and indicators can help you assess a person's risk level for self-injury or death by suicide. It is also important you stay alert to challenges. For suicide prevention purposes, the lights can change in both directions, and you have the opportunity to help someone change from red to yellow to green by putting your ACE training into action. How you use ACE will differ depending on the risk level or light color you are responding to. In order to recognize change, though, it is important to know your and others' typical behaviors and establish a baseline. The baseline is a person's typical behaviors and moods, how they typically react to stress, and their typical coping behaviors. Establishing a baseline of your peers means getting to know basic information about them, such as if they are single, dating, or married, whether they have kids or not, and whether they have family support nearby, and even the general health of their relationships and connections to others. A baseline can help you identify if someone is behaving uncharacteristically, which could be a sign that something is off with them, and could stir you to ask if they are doing okay. Checking in when you notice changes in behavior and mood from that person's norm will help develop rapport and also increase the likelihood of helping them if they are in crisis, or if they are struggling with something they may get out of hand if left unaddressed. Bottom line, Knowing the baseline of those around you is foundational to recognizing change and identifying risk. Let's review green light protective factors and the importance of intentionally strengthening them. Protective factors are skills, strengths, or resources that help people deal more effectively with stressful environments. Protective factors help to offset or mitigate risk. Here's a question. What are some examples of protective factors that can help offset or mitigate risk? Some examples of protective factors include being willing to talk with others about the things going on in your life, utilizing professional resources when needing help, and connecting to a sense of purpose like religious beliefs, your core values, or playing an influential role in another person's life. It is severely important to consistently work to improve or strengthen the protective factors for oneself along with those of fellow soldiers. Take a look at the protective factors on the slide. Consider which one or ones you could benefit from enhancing. As a soldier, you are part of a team. Your actions influence the protective factors of your fellow soldiers. For example, being part of a unit that supports each other's help people to feel connected. Healthy, strong connection to others is a core protective factor. So, let's take a look at how you can use the ACE process to bolster protective factors. It is important to note the Ask, Care, Escort as a process that can be used not only in a time of crisis, but also when recognizing risk indicators as well as to bolster protective factors. In the past, you may have only thought of ACEs being useful in a crisis, like in response to red light warning signs. You can use it in other contexts too. It can be useful when you recognize yellow light risk factors or simply change in one's behavior from their baseline. It can also be used as proactive prevention, such as bolstering the green light protective factors. Consider an example. In daily interaction with a fellow soldier in your unit, you might simply ask how they are doing or how a particular aspect of their life is going. You do not ask because you notice anything of concern, but you ask because you want to demonstrate you care about the person and their well-being. While asking in and out of itself is a demonstration that you care, and you can further show you care by actively and constructively listening and responding to what they must share. For instance, you could also ask follow-up questions to encourage them to share more about the good things in their life. Let's say the soldier is sharing their excitement about the performance gains they've been making recently, such as their score on the last ACFT. The escort step may involve inviting them to go with you to check out a resource like the Army Wellness Center for further support of your shared goals. Or escort could simply be setting up a time to engage in an extra PT session together. Here's an activity. We are going to facilitate a brief discussion for soldiers to discuss in small groups how they could use the steps of ACE to bolster protective factors within their unit. Here's a question. How can you use the steps of ACE to build protective factors within your unit? Discuss in your small group, and then I will ask for some of you to share with the large group. The goal is to get at least one small group to share. For an example, here's an ask. How are your college classes going? Here's a care. Acknowledge unit members as people and not just soldiers. And here's an escort. Initiate time to hang out off duty, like do an activity together. For example, go to the movies, go fishing, get coffee, or have a meal. Sharing a personal example of how you have used ACE to specifically bolster protective factors with others can really be beneficial here. Soldiers have likely developed some protective factors through their Army and life experiences. Life throws us many challenges. Throughout your Army career and life experiences, you have likely developed skills and strengths and utilized resources that help you to effectively cope with and overcome challenges. None of us are immune to falling into some unproductive or even unhealthy ways of coping or managing stress. However, how well we cope with challenges is one component of our risk. Everyone has some level of risk. Protective factors help decrease the challenges and chances that a combination of risk factors result in negative outcomes. Just like you might consult with a personal trainer or nutritionist to enhance your physical wealth, there are numerous Army resources like MWR or BOSS or Strong Bonds that can assist you in enhancing your protective factors. Next, we will move on to review the yellow light risk factors. Suicide is complex and typically does not result from one singular cause or factor. We all manage life's challenges differently. How we manage life's issues can be protective, as we've just discussed, or can increase our risk for negative outcomes. No single factor places people at risk for suicide. For some, it can be several. For others, just a few. Factors that can lead to an increase of suicide risk include loss, change, or conflict in relationships. Being bullied or discriminated against, or a job loss, or even financial problems can be factors that lead to an increase of suicide risk. We do know that having more factors can put someone at great risk for suicide, although changes in behavior and/or mood can indicate something is not going well or there's a problem. Often, this does not mean someone is thinking about suicide. There is always that chance, however. Therefore, it is important to pay attention and take preventative action by using ACE. In just a few moments, I will ask you to discuss how you will use ACE if you identify risk factors in a fellow soldier. As you recall, the first step of ACE is Escort. Let's review some resources that can be utilized to get the support you or your fellow soldier might need. Pay close attention so you can use the information in the exercise that follows. Here's a list of non-emergency resources. These resources should be used for someone who is struggling with a life event but who is not in crisis or considering suicide, as the resource may not be available 24/7 and may not be equipped for a crisis situation. Let us take a moment to review each resource and locate a direct contact number for each one within your local area. Keep in mind that this is not a comprehensive list. Non-emergency resources vary by location and environment. The ones listed apply to all service components. Here's a question. What other non-emergency resources that are not on the list? Remember, finding help can be a process. There's a value in knowing a variety of helping resources and in persevering in their efforts to get the help they or others need. Sometimes, accessing helping resources and securing the help one needs can be a process that requires effort and perseverance. The Army has been working hard to resolve the structural and logistical issues to receiving care, such as its limited capacity to meet the mental health needs of its soldiers. For example, in March 2023, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin ordered Pentagon officials to expedite hiring for more behavioral health professionals. This training is about what you can do to help the help you or others need. It starts with being mentally prepared to work through the process of accessing care and encouraging others to do the same. Next, we will discuss how to apply the steps of ACE to mitigate risk. As members of the Army, we are aligned by a common purpose and shared Army values. ACE can be applied to mitigate risk when you notice a change in a person's baseline, mood, or behavior. When a soldier demonstrates one or more risk factors, or in response to someone struggling with common soldier tasks, like a soldier stressing over preparation for a promotion board, or struggling with a personal issue, like a soldier being worried about having enough money to support a growing family. Here's an activity. I would like us to break into small groups. Each group will share a personal example of a time you recognized risk factors in another person and specifically used ACE or a similar process. The purpose of the question is to share ideas across groups. When you recognize the selected resource risk factors, how can you use each step of ACE to help a soldier mitigate risk? For the Escort step, be sure to identify a helping resource that is relevant to the risk factor your group chooses to discuss. Discuss in your small group, and then I will ask for some of you to share with the large group. If necessary, you can turn back to the risk factors slide to provide examples of risk factors for soldiers to choose from and focus their discussion upon. At this time, we are going to read each question on the slide and allow each group time to respond. Which risk factor did you choose to discuss, and how could you use each step of ACE to help the soldier mitigate the risk? When using ACE to mitigate risk, how might that in turn be strengthening a protective factor? Remember, when you use ACE, you are, in essence, being a green light protective factor for the other person. You are connecting, supporting, and helping the person find the resources they may need to lower their risk. Your supportive actions can strengthen trust and connection, and it shows others in the unit that you care. What you do when you identify risk factors in others can make a difference in what happens next. Getting teammates to the assistance they need earlier may prevent them from getting to the point where they consider suicide as an option. Despite your better efforts, some individuals may advance to a point of great risk and be showcasing red light warning signs. Let's review those next. Warning signs indicate the highest level of risk and are things that are more likely to be happening close to a suicide attempt. If a person is displaying one or more of the following warning signs, it may be an indication that they are contemplating suicide. When one or more warning signs are noticed, you must take direct, immediate action. The importance of trusting one's gut if sensing something is not right, regardless of not noticing any specific warning signs, is critical. Remember, this is not a comprehensive list of warning signs. Someone, people, or others who are suicidal may not show these signs or obvious sign of contemplating suicide. Sometimes it may be hard to see warning signs if too close to a person, or the person may be really good at hiding their struggle. If you feel that something is off, then trust your gut. This is a red flag and you need to take action. Let's review emergency resources that can be utilized to get the support you or your fellow soldier might need in time of crisis. As our activity, I would like for everyone to write down on a sheet of paper the contact information for each resource. It is important to know the available resources in your area. Once completed, I would like for you to add the contact information directly into their phone. There is an important distinction between emergency and non-emergency resources. Emergency resources are always open, and you will be connected and assisted right away. When a person is in crisis, use an emergency resource to ensure that they get the help they need as soon as possible. The helping resource you choose depends on your circumstances and location. If these resources are not close by or accessible, the nearest emergency room can also be a good option. Often, inaccurate perception that seeking help can negatively impact a soldier's career. Some soldiers and even family members of soldiers may be reluctant to get professional help due to fear of repercussions to the military soldier's career. Unfortunately, stories of when this might have been the case where seeking behavioral health care impacted one's military career are more readily shared than the stories of soldiers who got the help they needed and continued successfully in their career path. Furthermore, there could have been additional circumstances or factors involved in the cases where careers were impacted that were unknown or untold. As a reminder, accessing help from professional resources may be a process that takes perseverance, commitment, and follow-through. Whether for yourself or for a time you are helping another individual, do not give up. Keep pressing forward and try multiple resources until you or the other person receives the care and attention needed. When you notice a warning sign or have a strong sense something may be wrong, you must draw on the Army values like loyalty, duty, and personal courage to take action and apply the steps of ACE. It is a very important thing to ask directly. Are you thinking of killing or harming yourself? Show you care by giving them your undivided attention, actively listening to what they are saying, and letting them know you've got their back and will get them to the help they need. If they indicate they are thinking of suicide or harming themselves, it's important to escort them as soon as possible to the nearest helping resource. Here's a question. What have you done in the past, or can you do, to stay calm and composed when facing a crisis? To be most effective in a crisis situation, you must remain calm, composed, and in control. Next, secure any items that might be used for self-injury. Then consider your options for accessing helping resources. There is a reason that the Army takes training so seriously. With quality training, you are equipped to execute and respond with immediacy and accuracy. So, let's continue to training with a final check on learning. Here's a question. What are the warning signs that can indicate a person might be contemplating suicide and that require you to take immediate action? An example of that would be talking about death, giving away possessions, or regularly isolating. Be sure soldiers mention the direct question to ask. Are you thinking of killing yourself or harming yourself? Following the steps of ACE can save a life. When someone is in crisis, do not leave them alone, especially if they are suicidal. By asking the critical questions, showing that you care, and escorting the person to the help they need, you are protecting your battle buddy from harm and potentially saving their life. This helps to build trust, connection, cohesion, and utilizing resources, all of which are protective factors. We have just reviewed the Ask, Care, Escort process. You are now equipped to use ACE to bolster protective factors, mitigate risk, and support a soldier in a crisis. Many service members who have reported having suicidal thoughts or had a suicide attempt since joining the military have indicated that they did not talk to anyone or seek help. This shows that you cannot stand by and assume a person will reach out in a time of struggle or despair. A key takeaway from this training is to take initiative. Consider what that might look like for you, such as what actions you feel are important to take in the next week or two. We'll come back to this later in the training. Thank you for your participation in training thus far. Remember, once you complete the base module, you have one more additional module to complete to satisfy the annual mandatory ACE training. Leaders can select one of the following modules: Fighting the Stigma, Active Listening, Practicing ACE, or Lethal Means, which will further equip you with necessary tools to support your fellow soldiers and members of your circle of support. Before we dismiss, does anyone have any additional questions, comments, or something they would like to share? If not, on behalf of the DSC Commanding General, Brigadier General Manny Davis, and Command Sergeant Major Rodney Davenport, thank you for taking the time to learn additional tools and skill sets to better support your battle buddy in need. The goal is to connect to protect because suicide prevention is everybody's business.